Hello, everybody. What if I say the story of Michael Myers is true, not just something from Hollywood fiction, as we thought it was? What if it was based on a true person, a real life person who did unspeakable actions that inspired the movie Michael Myers? Well, after doing some research, I have found just that. Right there. I have found just the real thing about the real person, Michael Myers. So, enjoy.
These eyes do not see what you and I see. Behind these eyes, one finds only blackness, the absence of light. What is living behind these eyes is purely and simply evil. Michael Myers, also known as The Shape, is a fictional serial killer created by John Carpenter, first debuting on the silver screen in 1978. I'm sure many of you listening know all about the Halloween films and their impact on our culture. Every October, you are bound to see the altered Captain Kirk mask staring back at you from your TV screen, the mask section at Spirit Halloween, or a display cutout at the Walmart Supercenter. Maybe you'll even see the scene where Busta Rhymes kicked him out of a window.
Fatality.
I myself have gone through a phase of being obsessed with collecting Michael Myers masks, and making it a point to watch the original 1978 classic every Halloween. But this brings up a very real observation. Our society has always had a morbid fascination with serial killers, and the idea of Michael Myers being this soulless killing machine who really doesn't have a reason for doing the things he does reflects some real-life murderers who have done unspeakable things to innocent people, and that list is longer than I care to admit. The subject of today's Twisted Enigma is just one of many. On August 22nd, 1982, 11-year-old Ricky Stetson, a kid from Portland, Maine's working-class West End, laced up for an evening jog along the Back Cove Trail around 8 p.m. This coastal spot, which was always buzzing with summer tourists, would be the hunting ground for what can only be described as a vicious predator. Witnesses caught a glimpse of Ricky with what appeared to be a younger man on a beat-up bicycle, pedaling close behind. That night, Ricky didn't show up for dinner. Ricky's mother, a factory worker, and his father, a mechanic, rallied neighbors to scour the area. The next morning, August 23rd, at around 7:45 a.m., a local park ranger was sweeping the area near a shallow ravine, about 200 yards off the main path, a spot overgrown with tall grass and shrubby pines, often missed by casual hikers, when he noticed a patch of disturbed earth and a sneaker sticking out. Ricky's body was found slumped against a tree root, partially hidden by the brush. The medical examiner noticed lignature marks around his neck, plus a dozen stab wounds to the chest and stomach. There was no evidence of a sexual assault. Several jagged, deep bite marks were observed, and it appeared that the killer tried to mask them with post-mortem stab wounds. This was an 11-year-old boy who had met a gruesome fate that day. The murder of Ricky Stetson sent shockwaves throughout the Portland area. Portland PD immediately began an investigation into the homicide, later linking this incident to a knife attack in the Oakdale neighborhood in 1981, where 9-year-old Michael Whittem had a close call. He had been lured into a wooded area by a stranger asking for his name and age, then was slashed across his throat as he turned away. The description of the assailant was a Caucasian male in his late teens to early 20s, which matched the description of the cyclist who had been tailing Ricky on the day of the murder. This marked the beginning of a string of murders stretching over 1,500 miles from Maine to Nebraska. A murderous predator was targeting young boys with cold-blooded precision. On the morning of September 18th, 1983, in Bellevue, Nebraska, 1,500 miles away from the terror in Portland, 14-year-old Danny Joe Eberly, a local paperboy, vanished during his morning route around 5:30 a.m. His bike sat abandoned in front of a house on Galvin Road. His family hit the panic button as cops combed through the quiet suburb, but there were no signs of the boy anywhere. Officers interviewed Danny's brother, who recalled Danny telling him that he was being followed on prior routes by a suspicious white male, a detail that would become useful later on. After a massive 3-day search that involved volunteers, canine units, and helicopters scouring the fields and ditches near Offutt Air Force Base, a farmer discovered Danny's body 4 miles away from the disappearance. Much like the first victim, he had been stabbed multiple times. Hands and feet tied with a rope, a crude star shape was carved into his chest, and those same disturbing bite marks were found on the body. There was no evidence of a sexual assault, just another brutal murder of a teenage boy. Mayor Joe Baldwin, choking back tears, broke the news to Danny's parents at their modest home. A day that devastated not only the family, but also the entire community. The crime scene yielded critical forensic clues. The bindings were an unusual military-grade rope, later traced by the FBI to a South Korean manufacturing company for the U.S. forces, hinting that the perpetrator had a connection to the nearby Air Force Base. Sarpy County investigators processed the site meticulously, collecting fibers, tire impressions from the dirt road, and photographs of the ritualistic carvings. Parents in Bellevue locked their doors and kept their kids inside, as dark clouds of dread crept over the town. It wasn't long after the second murder, on the morning of December 2nd, 1983, 12-year-old Christopher Walden, a 6th grade student at the Bellevue West Junior High, was snatched 8 blocks from his house. A witness at a 4-way stop on Galvin Road saw a young white male in his early 20s shoving Walden into a cream-colored car around 7:45 a.m. The response from the Bellevue Police Department was swift, now coordinating with the Sarpy County Sheriff's Office under Sheriff Patrick Thomas. Over 200 searchers mobilized in -10-degree weather, including Air Force personnel from Offutt, who combed through the rural wooded areas that surrounded Bellevue. Media appeals blanketed the local stations, while child safety protocols were enacted across the district. Routes altered, escorts assigned, and playgrounds patrolled. After a grueling 3-day search, pheasant hunters stumbled on Christopher's frozen body, tucked away in the same woods off of 42nd Street. Like before, the body was found in the same conditions as the other two. 2 sets of footprints were found leading into the forest, but only one leading out. A chilling indication that this brutal attack was carried out by a single person. Forensic teams noted the identical rope type and bite marks, solidifying the link to the Eberly homicide and prompting urgent calls for federal intervention as the killer's boldness had escalated. With 2 unsolved child abductions and murders under 3 months, both bearing the hallmarks of a ritualistic predator preying on young boys near the Offutt Air Force Base, local law enforcement's frustration boiled over. No arrests, mounting public pressure, and a community on lockdown. On December 6th, 1983, The day after Walden's frozen body was discovered, they reached out to the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit for the psychological expertise needed to crack the case. As fear tightened its grip on the Bellevue community, local police were stumped with no leads on two high-profile homicides. They called in the FBI the day after Walden's frozen body was discovered. Behavioral analyst Robert Ressler, a trailblazer from the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, hit the ground in Nebraska by December 8th. Diving into crime scene photos and witness accounts, Ressler analyzed Danny Everly's body, noting the ritualistic nature of the killings. He spotted a pattern. The killer's rushed disposal of the bodies indicated panic and inexperience. Ressler's profile suggested the killer was a young white male, 18 to 22, slightly built, likely tied to the nearby Air Force Base, and possibly linked to a youth group such as the Boy Scouts. Although there were only two victims so far that they knew of, it indicated that the killer was evolving, refining his methods, and if they didn't capture him soon, there would certainly be more victims. By December 10th, 1983, Ressler briefed Sheriff Thomas, pushing for the focus of the investigation on military personnel and Boy Scout circles, a hunch that would soon zero in on a suspect. Nebraska police and news stations plastered a composite sketch around town, while Sheriff Patrick Thomas went on live television, calling the killer a sick, spineless coward and daring him to turn himself in. The move was both risky and debated. On the morning of January 11th, 1984, 6:30 a.m., Barbara Weaver, a teacher working at a local daycare center, spotted a strange car driving around the lot. The driver resembled the sketches that had been hung up around town. As she began to scribble down the numbers on the plate, the driver barged into the building with a knife and threatened to kill her. She managed to get away before he could attack and fled next door. Barbara Weaver was not able to get a full license plate number, but she did provide enough information for the authorities to link the vehicle to someone. Within hours, the police traced the vehicle to a John Joseph Joubert, a 19-year-old airman first class at Offutt Air Force Base. Officers were able to find Joubert at his apartment on base, where he was arrested. A search of his 1979 Chevy Nova uncovered the same military-grade rope, matching the fibers found on the victims' bodies, later confirmed by FBI lab analysis. Joubert was brought in for...
So Joubert was the guy who gave inspiration for Michael Myers. That's basically what's going on. And everything. Even though he did confess to the Odell knife attack, it was unclear if he actually lived in the state of Maine at the time of the incident. There is no physical or circumstantial evidence that placed him there. The attack matched his description, but did not mean it was him. A lot of people think he might have been somebody covering up and everything, but the details that he gave was only there that the killer knew. None of the cops released out the details of what's going on. But you never know. You know, you really don't know what's going on. And you don't know what's really behind somebody's head or in their mind. But here's another one about Michael Myers too. Here's another story about it as well.
Do you think the movie Halloween is just fiction? What if I told you that behind Michael Myers' mask lies a true story, buried for decades? A tale so dark that Hollywood toned it down. A truth involving blood, cults, disappearances, and a boy with empty eyes. It all began in 1962 in Russellville, Illinois. The police found an entire family brutally murdered inside their home. The strangest part, the house was locked from the inside with no signs of forced entry, and there was only one survivor. A 6-year-old boy named William Thorne. William was found in the backyard, covered in blood, holding a butcher knife. He was motionless, staring into nothingness. When asked what had happened, he simply said, "The man in the mirror told me to." The phrase echoed through the station. The officers never forgot the tone of his voice. With no solid evidence, William wasn't arrested, but he was soon sent to St. Marcus Psychiatric Clinic, one of the most feared in the region. For years, he didn't speak. He only drew, always the same blank face with a white mask. Doctors thought it was symbolic. They were wrong. In 1969, psychiatrist Leonard Mathis took over the case. He tried to understand the boy's mind, studying his drawings for months, until one October night, William spoke for the second time in his life. When the moon bleeds, he will return. Hours later, the psychiatric wing caught fire. William survived the fire with barely a scratch. Dr. Mathis wasn't so lucky. He was found burned, with his skull crushed. The report called it an accident, but firefighters swore. The fire started inside William's room, which had no electricity. No lighter was ever found. After the incident, the boy was moved to a maximum security wing. Curiously, 2 years later, his records were closed. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. No photo of the body, no autopsy, just a rushed, scribbled death certificate. William Thorne disappeared. Years later, at a flea market in Haddonfield, young screenwriter John Carpenter found an old diary. It belonged to the late Dr. Mathis. Inside were accounts of William, voices he heard, and a cult called the Order of Samhain, which used children as vessels for ancient entities. Carpenter became obsessed with the story. He saw the foundation for a script, but told no one about the source. He created Michael Myers, a silent killer with a white mask and empty eyes, an inhuman force. But few knew Carpenter wasn't just creating a monster, he was portraying one. During the filming of Halloween in 1978, strange things began happening. Lights flickered, equipment failed, and one actress claimed to see a man standing at the back of the studio. The crew thought it was paranoia. Until one day, something unexpected happened. A real death on set. The set electrician, Mark Daniels, was found dead in Warehouse 3. His body hung by the wrists, eyes gouged out. Beside him, one word written in blood on the wall: Samhain. The production tried to cover it up, calling it suicide, but no one could explain how he mutilated himself that way. After the incident, Carpenter began having recurring nightmares. He saw a boy staring at him, waking up always at 3:33 a.m. Once he woke with claw-like scratches on his chest. He sought spiritual help. A medium was called and said the energy there was older than evil itself. She left terrified. Carpenter rushed to finish the film. He said he needed to close the cycle. The film was an instant success, but behind the scenes, people close to the production began dying mysteriously. The editor died in a bizarre film reel accident. His scream was accidentally recorded. One by one, those involved in the original film vanished. Some left the industry, others had public breakdowns. Jamie Lee Curtis, the film's star, later revealed she felt a presence on set. She avoided being alone during filming. Michael was just a character, or maybe not. In the 1980s, journalist Claire Hensley investigated the film's origins. She tracked down Dr. Mathis' diary, but it had vanished from the production.
Yeah, it might have been based on a true story that Michael Myers might have been a real thing. You never know. But here's the theme song with Michael Myers I'm about to play, and I'm ending with that right there. Have a nice day.